Howdy folks, Jamboree here, and welcome to another episode of Film Chums. Joining me is my co-host, Viva Becker.
Welcome to our very special spooky episode.
You sound like Igor from Frankenstein. Master, it's the Film Chums podcast.
It's the Halloween special. It's not Halloween special.
In January, Master. I'm sorry I'm late. So, we're going to be talking about the Scream movies to tie in with the recent release of Scream 5, which is stupidly called Scream. It's just called Scream.
2022, I guess.
Oh, I hate that we have to... See, that's the... I don't mind Hollywood, like, rebooting, rehashing, remaking stuff, as long as they change the title. At least. just one little thing is that's all. You can make a terrible film. If you have a different title, I'm like, okay, fine. At least we can differentiate you from the legacy that came before you. I mean, say what you want about Dragon Ball Evolution, at least it has evolution in the title, so you can easily separate it from everything else.
It's a pretty hot take there that you are going on the record saying you don't mind all these remakes. That's a pretty hot take right there, James.
I don't... I can forgive a remake if it changes its title, and I mean that. I mean, like, but that's just mainly because I find it so frustrating when they keep titles. But it's not as bad. I'll tell you what. Calling Scream 5 Scream is not as bad or pretentious as when Final Destination 5 or 6 was called The Final Destination. I was like, oh, come on. So yeah, let's first talk about the original classic Scream from 1996. When teenager Casey Becker is murdered by a killer in a ghost face mask, the local media speculate on the mystery of the murderer's identity. Then, we're reminded that it's the impending anniversary of the murder of a woman called Marie Prescott, a killing that left Marie's teenage daughter Sydney traumatized and haunted. Sydney is also having relationship problems with her boyfriend Billy Loomis, because her grief has given her intimacy issues. Sydney also becomes a frequent target for the famous Ghostface killer, and she has no idea why. The threat of a murderer on the loose deeply affects the town of Woodsboro. Not only does it result in Sydney's school being closed down, but a strict curfew is also introduced. The ditzy but big-hearted cop Dewey is working with the sheriff to narrow down the culprit behind the mask, all while the ruthless reporter Gail Weathers attempts to seduce answers out of Dewey, only to fall in love with him for real. Sydney's goofball friend Stu decides to throw a party at his mansion, where everyone watches John Carpenter's Halloween with beer, and Randy the film geek explains the rules of horror to prepare his friends for possible danger. As the night goes on, Ghostface starts trying to kill Sydney's friends one by one. Then it turns out that her boyfriend Billy and his best friend Stu were both Ghostface all along. We learn that Marie Prescott slept with Billy's father, which led to his mother leaving the family, hence why Billy and Stu killed Sydney's mum, and now they plan to kill Sydney too, while also staging the murder to frame Sydney's father as the killer. Can our final girl outwit these teenage murderers? So, what do you think of this film, Viva?
Well, let's see. I went in with really high expectations because I know it's such an iconic franchise. I can maybe see why people liked it, assuming that back then it was a really new thing. I wasn't alive back then, so I don't actually know what the cultural zeitgeist was like when the movie came out. But it really rides on one thing in particular, and that's constantly referring to horror movie tropes, which is tired at this point. So it's like a cultural thing, but at this point you're not going to get very much out of it because I suppose the groundwork that the movie laid has been done so many times, you're not going to be surprised or excited at all.
I was about probably 6 when this film came out, so I didn't get to see it. And I didn't see it till like maybe my 20s. I can't remember my first reaction to it. I honestly don't. It's very, 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 very vague, which shows how old I am. But I've really grown to love this film. Beyond it being a cultural landmark. That's the thing, is that it is very, cinematically, it's very important, because during the 90s, horror cinema was like depleted. It was mainly just sequels to the classics from the 80s and 70s, and it needed to be revitalized, it needed to be revamped, and that's why Scream was so important, because not only did it like shake up the whole slasher format in different ways, but it also like held up a mirror to what had come before it.
That's what I was feeling like. Yeah, it felt like it was a movie for horror movie fans complaining about the state of horror movies at that time.
It very much is. And what's also important to remember is that it's directed by one of the horror masters, Wes Craven. So he has a deep insight into both like audiences' reactions to horror and the horror film industry in general. And I feel like that's a good balance to have, really. But beyond it being culturally significant and a film that pretty much sparks and enlivened horror during the 90s, I think it's a very clever movie, very sophisticated. And while, yes, sometimes it could be very on the nose and very upfront, I feel like the more times I've watched it, the more I've appreciated certain things. The more times you go into, the more times you repeat it, the more you notice little subtle things that you didn't before. And that's mainly down to the fact that, like, it was Wes Craven in his A-game.
Interesting. I didn't like the movie very much, so I'm interested to see what you got out of it.
For starters, I'm a massive horror nerd, so I'm like the target demographic for this film. Even though a lot of the conversations of the film are very heavy-handed with all the movie references, that's what film nerds, particularly with horror, are like. That's how we bounce off each other. It's almost like we don't switch off. It's almost like film reference all the time. So that's what I really resonated with. I love Dewey. I love Dewey so much. Mainly because he's a himbo trope. He's just so adorable. He's so stupid and so cute.
They really managed to erode my care for all of the characters by so much. And I just came off of watching the last movie, so I might be in a bit more of a negative headspace on the movies right now because there's such a process of erosion of care for these people. Like, I remember in the first one, there was stuff that I laughed at Dewey. I was like, oh, that's funny, kind of. I hate him with Gale. I hate the Dewey Gale thing. I wish they would stop pushing that. It's so stupid. I don't cheer for them at all. And I think they make each other worse. So my care for Dewey eroded as I saw him get more and more. Yeah, like, because every time I saw him, I had to see Gale, and I just don't like them together.
It's a very on-off relationship, and that's something I don't like. It's one of those things that's definitely not held up. And I don't like that relationship carried on through marriage. It made me think, okay, why are they still together? They really seem like they don't like each other.
But it makes Dewey seem like worse. Like such a bad judge of everything. I mean, I think the himbo thing is funny, and it can be funny as long as the himbo isn't harming other people. And Dewey is just literally so stupid that he's harming other people. So it's not funny anymore.
I think that's why Dewey's at his best in the first films, because he's so innocent. It's where he's at his youngest as well. So you can forgive him for a lot of the things. He's just so cute. The reason I think it's so smart is because, like I said, when I go back to it, I notice all these little clever details. Like, for example, how it plays around with foreshadowing and red herrings, and like you've got there's way more than just one red herring. It's not constantly it's not just one person that they're trying to get you to guess. Like, anyone could be a suspect, and that's what really appeals to me about the Scream franchise in general, is that anyone at all could be the killer. Even the leading character could be the killer. You just don't know. So for example, there's the scene in the toilet cubicle where Ghostface appears, and you see his shoes. You'll notice his shoes are police boots, and there are already 2 red herrings in the film that indicate that maybe a police officer did it, because you have Dewey acting a little sinister in one scene, and and there's all these other details about Dewey as well. They're kind of like, hang on, could be. And then there's a shot where a lot of emphasis is put on the sheriff's feet on his boots later in the film when he puts out his cigarette. It's just things like that really are like meant to play around with the audience that I really like, and I don't remember noticing the first time.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I have a couple things, I guess, that I'm thinking about that. One, I feel like this movie, or if you saw this movie back before you heard all the hype about it, or if you saw it in a different, like when it came out, it was perfectly designed for then. And now, with the cultural zeitgeist we have and the movies that we're seeing, I feel like it was, it's all that stuff they have is a detriment to it. Like, I couldn't appreciate that stuff because I literally already knew who the killers were. I knew. I'd seen it already. I knew. So I was like, I wasn't trying to guess because I already knew who the killers were. And so I wasn't sitting there like, oh, I wonder who it is, because going into it, it's pretty hard to not already know who it is just because it's such an iconic movie. And then the other thing is, going into the movie raw, what does the movie do to make you play that game with it? Because it offers you this game, but what is your inducement to play the game? You know? Because I didn't feel connected to any of the characters. I didn't really like any of the characters in any of the movies. So I didn't really care about the mystery because I was like, well, I don't like them, so who cares?
Yeah, if you're not going to care about the characters in an ensemble cast franchise, I get why you'd be like disconnected immediately. For me, I love the characters. I really do love the characters. I don't like how they're supposed to be like 17 or 18 and they're played by people in like 28.
Wait.
But that was
Gail
like
Weathers is supposed to be
90s
17?
No, the teenager characters. The thing is that, and this is something you can apply to all 4 films, is that satire is something that is inherently going to age a lot quicker compared to other things. I will make, yes, that's something, but at the same time, that was very much an intention on part of writer Kevin Williamson, because he felt like everyone was too focused on being timeless, and he really wanted to capture that period, and that intention definitely comes through in each film as well. It's kind of interesting in a way, because with every film you kind of see, okay, that's what horror cinema was like at the time. That's what they thought it was like at the time. Particularly with the sequels, because then they comment more on sequel culture. Mm-hmm. And I find it interesting when we get to 4, they're like, oh, remakes are the big thing. Everything's about remakes. And it's like, yeah, it wasn't the 2010s. It was kind of all remakes. And until there was like another boom for horror with like Jordan Peele and people like that. So it's I just found that interesting, that like they're sort of time capsules in a charming way. Yeah,
they feel really very well designed for the time that they came out.
Almost like reflections of that the years they came out. I think for me personally, the only detriment to the film, and it's not the film's fault, is the fact that I saw Scary Movie before I saw Scream. And I just can't look at Scream the same way because of Scary Movie. Like, Scary Movie ruined it for me.
Oh no. Well, I haven't seen Scary Movie, so I don't know exactly what it does.
Well, it takes the same scenes and just adds like a dick or fart or sex joke. That's all it really does. But because I saw the Scary Movie first, which is like the much more raunchy version, it's really surreal. It's really surreal seeing it straight after. The thing I appreciate the most about Scream is the filmmaking. Above anything is the filmmaking. But that's mainly me just fanboying over one of the masters. And like, I love the way that Wes directs this film. I really do. And I feel like this is the one he's most invested in. Because he really worked with the editor in like how to construct the order of sequences and how he could use that to manipulate the audience. And I like the creativity behind that. And yeah, I feel as if I'm most engrossed and most impressed by the beginning scene and the big finale. Because the beginning scene is almost like a short film in its own right. And the way that that's directed, all the principles of horror are there. The way that it escalates throughout the whole thing is just so good. I love the opening scene. And then with the finale, I've seen this film like 3 or 4 times, and I'm still engrossed in the finale. I just love the finale. And I don't know how Wes was managed to like take charge of that scene. Because like, if you notice, the characters are all over the place. They're all like they're like upstairs, downstairs, outside, down the street, and it's like, how do you keep track of all that? It's amazing. You managed to like keep that going whilst remembering who was in the Ghostface costume, and that's another thing that I really appreciated on watching the film again. Was there's a lot of thought put into who is in the Ghostface costume at the time. And when you're watching it, kind of like, oh yeah, it's definitely Billy at that bit, it's definitely Stu at that bit, because if it's Billy, he's in more control, he's more masculine. When it's Stu, he's a bit more clumsy, a bit more silly. So yeah.
Do you like the Ghostface costume? Do you think that's like a good design? I know it's iconic.
It is very iconic. I know, at the same time, I know a lot of people had reservations about it when it was like first chosen. Everyone was saying it's very goofy, very silly, and it is. But I feel like sometimes the film does lean into that because it does have its own sense of humor. There's no other masks like it in horror films, especially with like most horror masks are like they cover just the face, just the human face. But this one is elongated, it's stretched out. It really sticks out compared to other ones, and it has like this Grim Reaper look to it as well. Yeah, it's cool. I like it, and I love Roger L. Jackson's voice as Ghostface. He's done them for every film, and he's just got such a great voice. And I love that he can chat. He bounces between being like really calm, and then he'll start getting a bit creepy, and then he'll start becoming absolutely terrifying. Like whenever Roger shouts something, shouts like a threat, like ugh.
What do you want?
To talk.
Well, dial someone else, okay? Listen, asshole!
No, you listen, you little bitch. You hang up on me again, I'll gut you like a fish, understand?
As a voice actress yourself, what do you think of Roger's voice for him?
Man, I don't know what's a fair thing to say about it because it's such an iconic performance at this point that before I had seen the movie, I'd heard that same performance or people referencing that or doing that voice all the time. You know, it's kind of like how all the male voice actors can do Mickey Mouse, so you hear them doing Mickey Mouse, and then when you hear actual Mickey Mouse, you're not really that impressed because you're like, oh, it's that voice that everybody does. So in the movie, I wouldn't say I was scared. I wouldn't say that I was like really impressed because that's just a performance that I've heard every other male voice actor that I've come in contact with be able to do. But it was if this was like the first one, I mean, it was obviously iconic enough to inspire a lot of people.
I mean, it's the same actor who does Mojo Jojo for Powerpuff Girls.
And I, Mojo Jojo, shall be king of the planet of the apes!
To think that there's a stark contrast between them both, so it definitely shows it has range.
I haven't seen... Man, it's been a long time since I've seen Powerpuff Girls. I don't even remember I know who you're talking about. It's like the
really
monkey,
up.
but I don't remember what he sounds like.
Yeah, Mojo Jojo.
Matthew Lillard is really good. He's like the only
Matthew's
character
amazing.
in all of the movies that I actually liked. Because I feel like in these movies, the acting style is really weird. Like, it's very unnatural. It's a very unnatural acting style. And I feel like the only one who really pulls it off and thrives in it is Matthew Lillard, and everybody else is just like, what is this performance? It's terrible.
I love Matthew Lillard in general, and it doesn't matter what he's in, he's always just so entertaining and so charismatic. And I will agree that he's not just doing a great performance, but he's also possibly the most interesting character in the entire franchise, I'd say. Because Stu is someone, while you've got all these other characters that have like really clear motivations, like really straightforward motivations, Stu is one that's like, he's much more impulsive and he's kind of like on the spot, and I don't know, it just adds something a bit more real compared to the other characters. Like, you don't know what to expect of him. You don't know what's going through his head. You can't explain it right away. And like, he has reasons for why he does things. He'll say it, and it's like, I don't think it is.
Hello?
Oh, Stu. What's your motive? Billy's got one. The police are on their way. What are you gonna tell them?
Peer pressure. I'm far too sensitive. I'm gonna rip you up, you bitch! Just like your fucking mother!
You gotta find me first, you pansy-ass mama's boy!
Fuck! Fucking hit me with the phone, dick!
And like, if I was to do like an essay on any of the characters, it would be Stu. I think Stu is actually more interesting than Billy out of the two and the killers in this film.
Yeah, well, I think his lack of motivation fits in better with the movie than the other people, because it's supposed to be a comedy movie. I would say all these are comedy movies, not really horror movies too much.
Okay, you ready to talk about Scream 2?
Yeah.
It's been a year since the events in the first Scream movie. Sydney is now studying acting at college, while dating a student called Derek. The only other survivors of the Woodsboro murders are Randy, Gail, and Dewey. Meanwhile, Cotton Weary, a man that Sydney falsely accused of being her mum's killer, wants to go on television with Sydney to clear things up and get his 15 minutes of fame. But Sydney doesn't feel comfortable with that. At the same time, Ghostface has returned and is killing students at Sydney's college. Randy, Gail, and Dewey attempt to investigate the culprit themselves, only for Randy to be the next victim. Sydney's trauma from Ghostface's return makes her acting studies very difficult, and she asks Derek to give her some space until the killer is caught. Luckily, her best friend Hallie is willing to support her, but even she can't escape Ghostface's wrath. It turns out that Ghostface was Derek's best friend Mickey, who wants to become a famous serial killer, and he teamed up with eager reporter Debbie Salt, who was actually Billy Loomis's mother out for revenge.
What did you think of this movie?
I didn't like it. I mean, the only movie that I watched that I had a good time watching it was one. And let's see, Scream 2 was the weird one where they were trying to talk about race, right?
For part of it, yeah, it's like parts of it are about race.
I think it's so weird because, like, in the later movies, they have a concept that each movie wants to talk about, and it's like meta character dialogue, and they talk about it, and then they do absolutely nothing with it. They just bring it up, and that's it, and it's so weird to me. Like, at the whole beginning part of this movie, they have a lot of talk about people of color in horror movies and film in general and stuff.
It's a dumbass white movie about some dumbass white girls getting their white asses cut the fuck up, okay?
Yeah, I suppose Sandra Bullock is Miss Ethnicity, right?
Well, no, all I'm saying is that the horror genre is historical for excluding the African-American element.
Well, how you get your PhD in black cinema, Sister Soldier?
And they do absolutely nothing with it. Like, they don't subvert a freaking thing. The people of color characters are like nothing characters.
Kinda, sorta. What I did kind of like, and this was something the actor himself suggested to Wes, was that the cameraman, Joel, should leave halfway through, because he said that most African Americans would just leave the situation. But I kind of wish they leaned more into that, because they bring him back by the end, and I thought, you know what, he should have stayed away. He should have stayed away. But I know what you mean. Like, it's almost like the film opens up like a Jordan Peele film, and then it just becomes a Wes Craven film for the rest of it.
Yeah, well, they could talk more about, like, why is that? Either through a meta commentary on, like, the real life situations as to why different groups of people would generally react with more or less care for their personal safety, or some meta commentary about film tropes and maybe try and do something with that. But they just say, oh, well, most black people in movies run away faster and then they still die first or something, and then that's it. They just say that. What does that do for anybody? You know? What does that accomplish?
Yeah, it wasn't like they didn't have an opportunity to play around with it more. They didn't really. Yeah, I agree. They didn't really take it as far as they could, especially because, like, they could have done a lot with the character Hallie, who was like one of the lead characters, an African American woman.
Like the friend.
But she just ended up becoming like the token best friend for most of the film.
Yeah, all of the
you could have done so much more.
All
than
of the
that.
black characters in the film act very 90s movie token standard. They fit perfectly into the tropes of black characters back then, which I get it, you know, like it's a Scream movie and everything fits into tropes perfectly. That's the point. I don't know. Felt like a missed opportunity to me.
Yeah, I will agree. But I think maybe it was just the time. And I can imagine maybe student interference. You know what students are like in the 90s when it came to race.
Yeah, this was like 30 years ago.
For me, when it comes to this film, besides that what you said, I like that it explores sort of like the aftermath of what happened, and it's very aware of what was left behind for these characters, like so, both physically and mentally. And I like that it addresses those things, because a lot of horror sequels, they're just kind of like, I guess it happened, let's move on, kind of thing. But this one definitely acknowledges those things, especially when it comes to Sydney struggling to struggling to trust others, especially even her boyfriend. Especially, you got to remember, like, her experience of Billy is going to leave a lot of scars, and the movie does explore that.
You are concerned with my personal well-being and not with trusting me or anything, right?
Yeah, I think maybe it's just a different time now, but I think it's so weird, like, how pushy all the guys in the movie were. Like, even the nice boyfriend was kind of, they had, like, the creepy, pushy, and then, like, the Liev Schreiber was a creepy dude. It's, I'm like, is this what this is what guys were like back in the 90s? Weird. I think that's more because the film was, above anything, concerned about how many red herrings we can have. I think that's why it ended up being like that. So, my problem with this film, with Scream 2, was that so many of the supporting characters were kind of forgettable. Say what you want about the first Scream, at least they're trying something with each character. Like, you've got Billy who's like a complete psycho. You've got Stu, who's like the comic relief hamming it up, and all that kind of jazz. But with this one, all the side characters were just so dull to me, so dull. So much so that I didn't really like the relationship between Sydney and Derek, because Derek was just so bland. I get what the film was going for, because they wanted to show can Sydney move on and be with someone nice, but he's just so there. They don't really make him out to be very nice.
Yeah. He's nicer compared to, like, the stereotypical jock, and that's it. The strongest character flavor bits that we get from him is that here's this guy, he's rich, because he's going to this rich school, he's going to be a rich doctor, and he's in a frat. He's a rich frat boy, which, when you hear rich frat boy, does that paint a picture of not to say that rich frat boys can't be nice, but that's not the characterization that makes your mind immediately jump to, here's a nice guy. Whenever he was on screen, like, I glazed over because they would say his name, and I'd be like, oh, Derek. Oh, just like that guy from Swan Princess. Derek was, like, a really popular name back then, wasn't it? All the kids wanted to be named Derek. I wonder how many kids around then were named Derek. that does show how boring he really is. I was more distracted by the fact that he looked like me.
I literally don't even remember what he looks like.
I'm so annoyed. I keep seeing my doppelgangers. Look at him again. It's annoying. I'm sick to death of seeing myself in so many films. I don't know why so many actors look like me. And, like, fans keep sending me other ones, and I'm like, why are there so many? Is there a clone lab in LA? And then the whole twist that, like, Mickey is one of the killers. I was like, oh, him? I forgot he was even in this film. He's just kind of there. Just there in the background.
Do you remember how fast it took you to guess the killer in this one? Because I guessed this one, like, right at the beginning of the movie.
I can't remember, because the first time I saw this film was 2019, so I don't remember how fast I was. But I remember this time I remembered that Mrs. Loomis was, like, the main killer. I remembered that. But I completely forgot Mickey was the other. I couldn't remember who the other one was. So that really shows how little of an impact Mickey made. I really didn't remember who the partner was. I was like, oh, him. Okay.
Yeah, I kept on trying to figure out. I was like, is this kid from the first movie, or who is this? Am I supposed to know who this is, or is this like a new kid that they met at the university? I don't know. And then I was like, oh, his friend, Derek. Oh, that was a popular name back then.
I like the idea of Mrs. Loomis being the killer in this one. I like the concept of it, and I love the casting of Laurie Metcalf, because I just think she's a fantastic actress. She's known from things like she's Jackie, Auntie Jackie in Roseanne. She's Andy's mum in Toy Story, so she's very good at playing, like, maternal kind of characters. And I felt like once you worked out that, okay, that's Billy's mum, I was like, she's got a mum vibe, so yeah, she's getting it. And she can be kind of scary as well. I wasn't expecting that, like the way, because she has very big eyes. So when she's looking at someone intensely, it's like, ooh. But what did you think of the twist of Mrs. Loomis?
I was like, well, I don't think it was much of a twist because right at the beginning of the movie they introduced this side character, give her a weird amount of screen time and make her over the top nice. So that's like, okay, well, she's the killer then. So when they first introduced her, I'm like, okay, so she's the killer then. And so throughout the movie I was distracted because whenever Ghostface would show up, I'd be like, all right, so this is this old frail lady. Like, how is she pulling off all this shit?
What?
How
she's
does
old
she?
now. She's old now, but not in the 90s.
Listen, I'm not saying that she's like a grandma or anything, but she's obviously like old enough to people to look at her and be like, yeah, she could be a mom. So that's what I mean by old. Like, how does she overpower this like young college guy and drag him into this van so quickly? I don't know. She's strong for a lady.
That's my overall problem with this twist, is that when I look back on it, I'm like, okay, it doesn't really make a great impression of like which one is Mickey and which one is Mrs. Loomis. I'm like, So like,
I don't know.
I mean, like maybe the more physical scenes is Mickey. I don't know. I can't tell. That's something that the first film has over the sequels, is that they really kept track of where exactly Stu.
Everybody is.
Yeah, where Stu and Billy were at the time, and like when you rewatch Scream, you're like, oh yeah, I can see where Billy would be, how he had to move over here, and then Stu had to put on the costume here. But with this one, you're kind of like, hang on, who's who? I feel like Laurie Metcalf really saved the character for me, and I really like that moment where Sidney like calls out Mrs. Loomis by saying, look, yeah, you're caring about your son now after you abandoned him, and like the way Mrs. Loomis reacts, like she doesn't know what to say, because like she's in like protective mum mode, but at the same time she has all this baggage of guilt, and I like that. I like that.
You don't know what it is to be a mother, to raise a child, and teach him, and guide him, and abandon him.
Her end performance was pretty good. I thought it was hilarious when she like got crushed by all the foam rocks and she just like lay under there for a couple minutes for no reason. I was like, that's foam though. It's foam. They could have explained better, like she's like, oh, this kid, I just found him on the serial killer website. I'm like, serial killer website?
That was so dumb. I'm sorry, that was dumb.
So you two are in this together?
Yeah, well, had to have financing. Tuition's expensive. Deb there, my backer. We met on the internet, psycho website, classifieds.
I mean, she could have said any other thing, because like she could have just said like the deep web. Like that could have like made you go, oh right, that's why nobody found this website. Because if you,
I'm like, what? They really didn't understand the internet very much back then. They were just like, yeah, probably a serial killer website out there. I don't know. I feel like they didn't. I feel like that just like grabbed my brain for a bit, and I woke up and I was like, wait a second, go more into that.
What I really liked about the finale was how it made great use of that theatre set. Not just like the main set that was used for the actual school play, but also like how the characters had to like chase each other around that theatre and make use of the things that were in the theatre. I really liked that.
Freaking rich school, freaking rich theater, and their like film lab, freaking rich. They had so much stuff. What the heck?
So many resources. I remember when we saw the play that Sydney's in, and like had smoke effects coming up. I was like, how did they get those?
Yeah. When they showed the play, I was like, what the heck? I was like, this is supposed to be theater college? Bro, I went to theater college. I think I do like that her arc is she goes to fancy theater college, and then right after she gets professions that have absolutely nothing to do with theater. That's hilarious.
That kind of happens though, if I'm honest.
I know. That's why I think it's funny.
Yeah, I've met up with like friends from college, and like I'm like, hey, do you make films still? I'm like, no. I will say this, Scream 2 is the best sequel. I'll say that. It's definitely the best sequel. Out of all the sequels we've given so far, it's the easiest to watch, and definitely the strongest out of the 3 sequels. But are you ready for Scream 3?
Production has started on Stab 3, a film inspired by the Woodsboro murders. However, each cast member has been killed off behind the scenes by a new Ghostface. Dewey, Gale, and Gale's actress Jennifer tried to clue in on who this killer could be, only to unravel the truth that Sydney's mother Marie was actually a Hollywood actress, and studio executives took advantage of her at a party back in the 70s. Meanwhile, Sydney has been in hiding, working as a domestic abuse support worker from home. But Ghostface manages to track her down, and so Sydney heads to Hollywood to help the investigation. It's revealed that the killer is Stab 3's director, Roman, who turns out to be Sydney's half-brother. Roman felt neglected by their mother, so he egged on Billy Loomis to kill Marie Prescott all those years ago, and now he wants to finish his revenge scheme by killing Sydney too.
Think I remember liking Scream 3 better than 2.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. So this one, a lot of Scream fans consider this one to be the worst Scream film. I disagree, but like, I get where people are coming from. So with Scream 3, the things you have to remember several things to know why Scream 3 is Scream 3. So first of all, completely different writer. Kevin Williamson has written all the other Screams, and the whole Scream identity comes from him. You now have a completely different writer, a writer that the studio themselves chose, not Wes. So yeah, had this completely different person, and you can kind of tell because like characters act a bit more different, and like the style of humor is different, and yeah, it's almost like it's a different universe in a way. The other thing to take into account is that this film was produced during the Columbine shooting. So the filmmakers were very conscious of how their film would be perceived when it came out, and how it would affect society, all that kind of jazz. So they decided to lean way more heavily into the comedy, which is why a lot of the film feels like a live-action Scooby-Doo film. I say all this, but I'm probably in the same boat as you. I prefer Scream 2. But this is kind of fun in a goofy sort of way. This one, what I like the most about this one is that it's a completely different setting, because all the other films are set in like somewhere very suburban or some kind of like school, and it's kind of the same place every time. But this one, the whole thing is pretty much at a movie studio, and it's in Hollywood, and it has its. So I feel like that's what helps it stand out from the others in a way.
Yeah, I thought that was refreshing. I think leaning into the comedy is a good choice because these are comedy movies. And like people die in them, but I really don't see them as horror movies because they're not scary. And the kills are really boring. Like, horror-wise, they're really boring. It's one stab and then pour a little blood on them and that's it.
That's pretty much the intention that Wes was wanting to kind of, like, downplay the violence, because the violence wasn't the important thing. It was the themes is what it was focused on. So that's why they're not very gore-heavy. Plus, it doesn't help that the MPAA kept telling him to cut stuff down constantly. But yeah, I get what you mean. But at the same time, I can see why fans really don't like it, because it does not take itself as seriously as the others.
Well, do the others take themselves seriously?
Kind of, sort
really?
of. They were still exploring the drama and the legacy and the curse of Sydney's mum. There's elements, there's darker elements, there's more serious elements there. But I think what makes them consistently stay in this comedy venue is Ghostface, because Ghostface is always played by just an everyday person, so not a professional killer, not someone that has a background in like assassinating people, just everyday people like mums and boyfriends and cousins, all that kind of stuff. So like every time you see Ghostface, he's going to be a bit clumsy, he's going to be a bit silly.
Except for when they have to do the part where it's like he's right there and they turn around and he's gone.
So I have mixed feelings in general about Scream 3, because while it's kind of interesting seeing them going in this different direction, it's kind of an obnoxious film.
Yeah.
It can get kind of annoying. And I'd say that this one is the worst acted out of all four. Some of the performances are very grating to watch.
Gail, I think you'll really appreciate my character work in this one. Someone's helped me understand the real you.
Someone?
Your ruthless ambition, your private self-loathing, and that lost and lonely little girl inside.
Lost and lonely what?
Here, I think, I feel like the performances are grating in every film, and at least in these ones, the performances are funny.
Kinda, sorta.
Sometimes. Not all the time, but at least there's, like, they manage to make it humorous at some points, whereas other ones, they're just bad for, it feels like no reason. I mean, I think that's the style of the movies, is that all the performances are going to be bad, but I don't know. I don't really understand. Well, I do. I think they make the performances bad to go along with the meta thing.
I think the performances for most of the others are fine.
Are you serious? The acting in 2 was so bad?
It was fine. It was totally fine. It was acceptable. I was fine for most of it. With 3, I was just like, some of the acting, it was like soap opera. I'll say this right now, the whole Scream 3 just feels like a soap opera. From the acting to the twist, everything is very soap opera-y. Which kind of works in a sense, because it's set in Hollywood.
Because it's like it's supposed to be like Hollywood, really bad
B-movie kind of thing, yeah. So each Scream film has like something they want to focus on. So the first Scream was about classic horror. The second Scream was about sequels that rehash the original. And the fourth is going to be about remakes. We'll get to that. And the third one is about trilogies, and it definitely dates the film. Because we've got 2 films since. So it's a little awkward seeing this movie being like, this is a trilogy. This is the conclusion. And it's like, no, you're not.
Was this what was going on at the time, though? Because was this around, like, when the Final Destination and, like, the last chapter and that kind of thing were?
No,
was that, I thought maybe they said that, where they were going into that as, like, part of the trend of movies being like, this is the last one, when it wasn't.
It might have done. I can't tell, though. You can't really pull that kind of joke off until you've done another one, though. Yeah. For most of the film, it really stands on the idea that, like, yeah, this is the trilogy. And I kind of wish it was, if I'm honest. As many problems I have with this movie, I feel like it wraps itself up pretty nicely. Like
yeah, I wish it was too. I freaking hate the fourth one. The fourth one is my least favorite.
We'll get to the fourth one. But like I felt like the ending for this film, the way that it just finished and capped everything off, I was like, yeah, okay, yeah, you can stop there. That's fine. And it kind of annoyed me because I knew there was a fourth one. It's like, no, you're fine. You're done. The story's over here. There's like a nice little cycle for the entire legacy of Ghostface, and it felt like it was complete. So, yeah. If you were going to end the film series anyway, it would be free. So I know that a big part of this film was like the idea that Ghostface is writing the movie. And that was kind of a unique premise. The idea that like Ghostface was the director, and that kind of like foreshadowed who the killer would be. As goofy as it is, I kind of like that scene where he's literally printing out the script, and it's like it's writing what's happening in that scary scene at that time. As dated as it is, I was like, that's kind of cool.
I liked that part because the performances were so over the top and like goofy cartoon Scooby-Doo that it was like energetic. It was something to wake you up a little bit.
So my point is that they really lean heavily, more than any other film, into the whole like this is like a movie thing because they're in Hollywood. Mm-hmm. And I do like how it addresses the dark side of Hollywood.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I'm not saying it does it good, but I'm saying I like that it goes there for the time.
I think it's hilarious that Hollywood is continually making these movies about Hollywood and a lot of times they try to address the issues, and then Hollywood does absolutely nothing. I'm like, you obviously see that you're making these movies, you have the power to change this, and you do nothing.
Oh, yeah. Obviously, in a real-life context, it's shit. It made no impact whatsoever. But I liked that I wasn't expecting them to go there, if you know what I mean. I wasn't expecting them to address, okay, so there's some really shitty, shady things happening in Hollywood. I like they at least say, it's happening. It's not enough, but it was something, and I didn't see it coming, especially for a 90s film, because during the 90s, everyone in Hollywood was like, shh, shh.
It was in the 70s. Everything was different. I was well known for my parties. Men who knew what they were. It was for girls like her to meet men. Men who could get them parts if they made the right impression.
I like the celebrity cameos in Free. So, the celebrity cameos were, you got Roger Corman as the film executive, right at the beginning of the film. Then you got Carrie Fisher, and you've got Jay and Silent Bob. I'm not saying that these cameos do much for the film, but like, as a film buff, I was like, yay! Especially Carrie Fisher. Legend.
So how can I help you? Or do you want me to tell you who you look like?
I didn't notice any of the... I noticed Carrie Fisher because they made that pretty obvious, but
yeah.
The other ones, I was like, I didn't really notice anything.
You didn't notice Jay and Silent Bob walking by the studio? You know Jay and Silent Bob who are, right?
Oh, wait, yeah. They made a big deal of that, too. I actually forgot about it. I don't know. I haven't seen any of their stuff, so I really didn't care that much. I feel like they cheated at the end to try and trick you as to who Ghostface was. Because they show the guy, and they're like, yes, for sure, they're checking, he's dead. There's no way it could be him. Like, he's definitely dead, you guys. It's not him. He's definitely dead. We've checked. We're telling you he's dead right now. And I thought it was him, and then they showed his body, and the characters told me that he was dead, and so I was like, oh, I guess it can't be him.
Yeah.
And then they cheated, and I was like, oh, well, they cheated. And then also I was kind of like, why do they have this emotional moment between Sydney and the freaking brother guy?
Roman.
And they play the emotional music and everything, and then they just destroy that a couple seconds later with a comedy. I'm like, decide if it's gonna be a comedy moment or not, you guys.
The thing is, as much as I like the idea of the director being the killer, like I said before, it's kind of patchy. In general, it's kind of patchy. I mean, like, there's one thing that's bothered me since I saw Free was how I can't remember what was his alibi, because he got investigated by the police, and I don't remember him ever what happened with that.
They said that they had to let him go because the call didn't come from his phone.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
They could have done a bit more investigating, I think.
Yeah, well, to be fair, like, how could they have known that he would have this, like, random device that perfectly mimics someone else's voice, like, frickin' 40 years before anything even close to that would come on the market? Like, this frickin' top secret military device. No explanation as to how he got it or why this is, like, works like it does.
Yeah. Well, the thing, I did like the premise of a Ghostface that takes way more advantage of the voice changer, and it's surprising that the films took this long to get to doing that. But once you realize, okay, this Ghostface has more voices on his voice changer, you just get to a point where, like, yeah, I know what. Yeah, it's not really them. It's Ghostface. It's Ghostface. It just becomes predictable,
Yeah.
which is annoying because, like, there was something they could have really turned that down a bit, so it was harder to work out, because the more times they did it, the more it got into a pattern where it's like, yeah, that's Ghostface.
Yeah, and almost any time someone, like, if the character got a call and you could hear the other side of the conversation, you would know that it would be Ghostface.
I didn't really realize that it was Roman when he took off the Ghostface mask, because he wasn't wearing his glasses. So the whole time I was like, who's this guy?
Is this? This random dude?
It wasn't until Sydney said Roman, pointing to him, and I was like, that was Roman? I thought he was dead. That's why for like 5 whole minutes or so, 5 or 10 minutes, I was literally just sat there going, when was this guy foreshadowed? Fair enough if he turned out to be like the half brother of Sydney and was plotting all these years. I kind of wish they leaned into that more throughout the film, because he barely had a relationship with Sydney. They could have really played a bit more into that. Yeah, they really could have, and that would have made the big reveal even more emotional and more impactful if like there was something there between them. If they had like a really strong bond throughout the film, and she realizes, oh, not only are you the killer, you're also my half brother. Shit, this is a big deal. It doesn't feel like a big deal when he takes off the ghost face mask.
I was so convinced that the killer was going to be Matthew Lillard in this movie, and I was so mad when he took off the mask and it was freaking Roman.
Yeah, it was going to be Stu, and Matthew did get paid to play Stu, but it never happened. Yep. It was gonna be Stu. It was really gonna be Stu. The closest we ever got, right? Here's the thing. The closest we ever got to getting Matthew Lillard back was in 2. He makes a tiny, tiny cameo in the party. He's right in the background. That's all we get.
No! Oh, I saw that he was credited as, like, Stu. Like, when I was going to rent the movie, I saw he was credited, like, on freaking Google or whatever, and I was like, yes, he's gonna come back. He's gonna he's gonna be the killer. I was so excited. And then they took off the mask, and I was like, what is this, the boyfriend from the last movie?
It should have been Stu. It really should have been. That would have been it would have meant way more. It really would.
Especially since they cheated with Roman's body already.
Yeah.
You can't just show him to be like he's dead. That's cheating.
You could have like shown Stu all scarred up as well. Like all scarred up when he takes off the mask because like of all the slicings and all that kind of shit from the first film. Yeah, you could have been. And
it would have been more interesting because he was all like,
He has a history with Sydney.
Yeah, and you'd be like, well, what's his motivation to come back this time?
I think a really good motivation for Stu being the killer would be that he kind of maybe got a bit miffed about his reputation of being like the lackey, the idiot, and he wanted to prove, no, I can do it by myself. I don't need Billy. I don't need Billy's help. I can do this all by myself. Which makes sense because this is the only Scream film where there's one killer.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. There was only one killer in this one?
Yeah, there's only one killer. That's another thing that stands out about the film.
Interesting.
He had no partner. I don't know how well that makes sense, because I'll need to watch the film again. But yeah, he did it all by himself. He didn't need a partner. He didn't need to go into serialkillers.com for a partner.
Wow.
Okay, are you ready to talk about Scream 4?
God. Are you ready to talk about Scream 4?
No.
Seems like you have something to say about it.
In the sequel set over a decade since the last Ghostface murders, Sydney returns to Westboro to promote her new book on survival. She plans on staying with her Aunt Kate and cousin Jill. Suddenly, Ghostface violently kills Jill's neighbour and best friend Olivia. Jill blames Sydney for Ghostface's return, causing tension between the cousins. Meanwhile, Gail and Sydney visit the school's film club geeks Charlie and Robbie, who theorize that this new Ghostface is trying to remake the events from the first Scream, and is documenting the murders on film. The teenagers host a stab-a-thon house party where guests are killed one by one, and we learn the Ghostface is actually Jill and Charlie. Jill wanted to steal Sydney's fame as a final girl, and Charlie saw this murder spree as a chance to get a girlfriend, but Jill ends up double-crossing Charlie. Jill then stabs Sydney and stages the party murders in a way that frames herself as a brave survivor. However, it turns out that Sydney lived, and Jill furiously attempts to kill her cousin before the truth gets out.
So Viva, what did you think of this movie?
I thought it was terrible.
Agreed.
I mean, I don't like all of the my generation of stars. I don't like them very much. And this movie was just full of my generation of stars. So I was like, Okay.
My problem was that you can really feel like it's been 11 years since the last one. Soon as you start it.
Because everybody's so old.
And like, everything just feels worn out. It's a very worn out kind of film. A good comparison would be like Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull. Those kinds of films where it's been like almost a decade or more, and you feel it. I feel like Scream 4 has that atmosphere to it. And it didn't help that by the fourth one, I was just burnt out by these movies, and I just... and this movie, one of its biggest things is saying, oh, the thing about remakes is that you should never expect the predictable. And as soon as they said that, I was like, okay, so your whole gimmick is going to be you're going to do what we don't expect. Now you're going to be predictable.
Modern audiences get savvy to the rules of the originals, so the reversals become the new standard.
I went into this being like, oh, I'm so tired of seeing the same thing again and again and again. And now you're going to change things up and let us know that you're changing things up.
They didn't change anything up, though, and they were patting themselves on the back so hard.
Oh, it's the most self-satisfied film out of all four of them.
Movie,
really
and I
is.
hated it.
Yeah, I see what they were trying to do, because they were having the final girl and the film geek be the killers, stuff like that. Like just basically taking the first Scream and just doing the opposite. That's it, really.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. I was just like, this is predictable and stupid. I mean, I knew it was going to be the girl. I knew it was going to be Emma Roberts from the beginning because this was around when, like, having the girl be the killer was the thing. Like, whatever, the freaking Alexandria Daddario was the Texas Chainsaw Leatherface or whatever and stuff. And, like, the girl in freaking Saw was the killer around then or something, too. Everybody was doing it. It wasn't surprising. Emma Roberts isn't threatening at all. She was terrible in the movie.
No, she was pretty bad.
Who are you? Michael fucking Myers? Yeah, I don't think so. Fucking die already!
By the fourth film, you're kind of like, you're just becoming what Scream was trying to satirize in the first place.
You know, at the beginning, I thought they were going to do something different because they had 3 versions of the opening scene, and they were just jumping between them, and I was like, oh, maybe they're doing something like artsy and different. I don't really know who these people are and what's in the movie and what's not, so that's cool. I thought that was interesting. If they had done something really different where it was just that opening scene over and over and over again with different people, that might have been interesting.
It's also predictable. There's no element of surprise. You can see everything coming.
Did that surprise you?
And also, this was quite a bit later than the other movies. And so it's in the modern, I would say it's in the modern period of movies now. So I expect more from their meta commentary and like the social justice commentary that they try to make, and they really let you down with that. Like, the freaking homewrecker police officer isn't punished at all. She doesn't even get stabbed or shot like one time. There are no physical injuries to her, so absolutely no punishment to her at all.
Yeah.
Really? And you introduce this character by having her be specifically a homewrecker to like the main couple of the series? Really? And I was like, okay, that's fine, you know, she doesn't have to, like, she can just be there as one of the characters, but then why introduce her in this way? Yeah,
she was probably one of, which is saying a lot, what I'm about to say, but she was probably one of the most unlikable characters in the film. There was nothing to her, and there was no point of her kind of being there. She was just there to be conflict for the marriage. That was it.
I mean, the characters themselves have enough conflict. I think they've managed to make the conflict in the other movies without needing a home wrecker.
Yeah.
I thought the other, like, the third wheel girl they had in Scream 3 was better. She wasn't trying to be a home wrecker. She was just kind of there, and she was, like, fun.
Did you see this, Stewie? I haven't had one of these in a year and a half. Someone's gonna pay for this.
Jennifer, settle down. What happened?
I said that Scream 2 lacked interesting supporting characters, but wow, does Scream 4 lack interesting characters. The only one that stood out for me was Rory Culkin, because it's Rory Culkin. He's awesome.
Which one is that?
He was the long-haired dude, but that's only because of casting. It's not an interesting written character, but when you put Rory Culkin in something, he's gonna be charismatic.
You have to be strong and hold still, okay?
Yeah, old school, like Billy and Stu. Come on, baby, get it up. Come on. Shoulder me, get it up!
I mean, what does he get? What does he get punished for at the end of the movie? What would you say that his murder is? What is he getting punished for by that murder? I guess
for being an accomplice.
For being an accomplice and like going along with the plan.
Yeah.
But he never gets punished for being like sexually harassing and like really objectifying women throughout the whole movie. And I think it's like throughout the Scream movies, they have a really big theme of everybody doing it is like objectifying women. And then they have this anti-objectifying women kind of message in 3, which they don't do anything with. They just say like this is a bad thing. And then they keep on doing it in this new movie, which is now in the modern era of movies, so they should really stop doing that because that's really dated at this point. And then the kid who does that doesn't get punished. I thought it was kind of uncomfortable, like, with how excited the film was to kill a gay character. They were so excited.
Yeah.
They were like, yay, we're doing it, you guys. We're going to kill him. And I'm like, this is weird.
I know what you mean, because, like, basically, one of the characters is revealed to be gay as he's being killed. And they kind of play off as like a joke, because they're like, oh no, I can't be killed because I'm gay.
Yeah, you have a gay character in your horror film, great, but he's just a weird creep who goes around filming people without their consent, and then he's killed for a punchline just so the film can subvert a horror movie rule that it made up, isn't true, and is insulting to modern queer cinema.
In fact, the only surefire way to survive a modern horror movie, you pretty much have to be gay.
Have the filmmakers never heard of the bury your gays trope?
Pat yourself on the back for that, really?
Also, like, why did the teachers let him, like, do that, you know? Why did they let him, because, listen, I was in school back then. I would be, like, the same age as the characters, and you weren't even allowed to, like, wear a hat. And they're like, yeah, you can just wear this camera.
It's an awful looking thing as well. This is from 2011, you know, look at that, and you're like, that's dated even by now. I don't remember anyone casually walking around with something like that, and it makes him look like he's from the 80s.
Yeah, I was really confused. I was confused.
It's really dumb. It's really dumb. What they should have, and even in 2011 is what they should have, is a GoPro on his head, and like a normal headset. That's what he should have had, but he didn't. They were trying to make him look cool, and it's like, why?
Or they could have him filming, like, with his iPhone or something.
I didn't get in general how his streaming thing worked, because he'd be like, it would go live for like a minute, be like, hey, I'm over here, turns off. I'm over here, turns back on again. It's like, do the filmmakers know how streaming entertainment works? I say that as a streamer myself. You didn't know that we stay longer than like 2 seconds to do something? How are people meant to know that he's live?
Yeah, who's this guy's audience? What is the audience?
I don't know.
Also,
it didn't even show like a chat box or anything.
He was live streaming while he was getting killed as well, and nothing happens from that. I thought that they were gonna do something where it was like the girl does the confession, and then like it was like surprise, she was live streaming the whole time, and then it was like, oh, the new technology, the downsides of the online life, and something like that. They didn't do that. They just made her stupid at the end.
I don't get why this is the one. I don't get why this isn't the one that fans hate the most. This one makes 3 at least watchable. I was so bored throughout the whole thing. This is the only one where I felt sleepy.
Yeah. Why?
I can't remember half the film.
Here's something. Why do they not make the other like film club guy be the one that's always filming? And then it could be revealed like found footage kind of like he was always filming because they were going to make this found footage kind of movie, and then he would just be like, oh, haha, you thought I would just like filming stuff on my phone or whatever, because that's what all the kids do. And like found footage films were a big thing back then, but instead they have this weird thing where they set up like a stationary like security camera looking thing.
Yeah.
Every time before they kill someone, like how do they know that the person is gonna be there? Like how do they know that Gail was gonna like break in and be up in the freaking rafters? And
yeah, whole thing just doesn't add up. Out of all the plans in these films, this is the one that's the most convoluted.
Yeah, and
once it's all-
culturally, I feel like it was dated even when it came out, and there was a better way to do that.
How can the one that's the newest be the most dated out of all four of them?
Yeah.
At least with like 3, 2, and 1, you can look at things and be like, actually no, that kind of thing still happens, or actually no, that horror cliche is still going.
I'm annoyed that freaking Dewey and Gail are still together because they literally start out their marriage being like, I know this isn't gonna work, but maybe we should just try anyway. I'm like, what a terrible thing to say.
Yeah, they were so frustrating. They were so annoying. Every time they were on screen. Like, I can't remember any scene in Scream 4. At least with some of the previous Screams, they had some inkling of romance. But with this one, they just looked like they were ready to divorce.
Gail, with all due respect, I don't see how that pertains to...
Because I wrote the book on this. The Woodsboro Murders by Gail Weathers.
But you're not a reporter anymore, Gail. And
Whoa,
even if you were...
Whoa, don't treat me like I'm the media.
I think it was a mistake to keep on making the Scream movies like about the same cast of characters every time. Maybe if they had like a new main person every time, like in each movie, that would be. But it doesn't. It seems so far-fetched that it's the same girl and literally the same exact thing, like with the tropes and everything happens every time.
I'm fine with like a new generation, but like the generation from 4 is just so boring. I just don't care.
Well, everybody in 4 is dead, so.
Good. They deserve to be dead. Making me feel that sleepy. Okay, so how would you conclude the Scream movies?
I think that if you haven't seen the franchise yet, then the boat is kind of sailed on. The boat is gone. I wouldn't invest any time in watching the franchise because the value that you could get from watching it is dependent on seeing it at the right time, and the time has passed. I think it's time to retire. Watching it and recommending people watch it.
This is why this is why I'm just going to stand by saying that the first one is the best one to recommend, because at least with that one, it mainly made commentary on films to this day that we still know and trends that we still kind of know. And it was mainly like referencing things like Halloween, Friday the 13th, the big classics, the timeless ones. While the others were just very much like focused exactly there and then. Basically what I'm saying is the first Scream's the least dated one. Go and watch that one.
I would say maybe don't watch this one if it's your first horror movie, though. I see a weirdly large amount of recommendations for Scream as a good starter horror movie or like your first one. I see so many people say this is a good first one.
No.
I'm like, you're not going to understand the commentary if you watch this as your first one.
Definitely no. It's the thing with the first Scream is that it's a horror film geek's horror film. So you need to be a horror geek first.
Like, yeah, it's not scary, but the appreciation is dependent on knowing other horror films. So
for me, I really love the first Scream. I feel like it's a great example of the principles of horror done fantastically, and Wes Craven at his best. The sequels I can take or leave, but I have a soft spot for Scream 2 because the first time I watched it, I was going through a really hard time. And it was Halloween, and just watching Scream 2 at that time, just kind of with a pizza, kind of cheered me up. So, yeah, I can kind of.
What kind of
it.
pizza?
I don't remember. It was 2 years ago.
Pathetic.
I'm sorry. Right. Okay. So I've been Jamboree.
Yeah,
Sounds like you're tweaking your voice changer, Ghostface.
What's your favorite horror movie?
What's your favorite scary movie?
What's your favorite horror? What's your favorite scary movie?
I don't even know. Oh, The Shining.
Stupid! No, you're not supposed to say
is.
an actual scary movie. You're supposed to say like the joke is that you say a movie that's not a horror movie.
Nah. The Shining. Staying by it.
All right. Don't go see the new one.
I have no interest. After seeing 4, I have zero interest in seeing the new one.
I'm recommending everybody not go see the new one.
Okay, cheerio, folks.